Alright, what's up you guys? I'm back. 3 days in a row, I'm doing good. Today I'm gonna be doing it's gonna be kind of a DVD review / career retrospective on Brian Pillman. Of course today is the 25th anniversary of his death, October 5th, 1997. There was also a big main event that took place that day in history, the first ever Hell in a Cell match between Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, and the debut of Kane. We're going to be getting into all of that here. Probably just going to be talking about the Hell in a Cell match and the Brian Pillman stuff. I'm not going to go through the entire card. This is mainly going to be on Brian. So, if I missed anything in the bonus features or anything on the documentary or matches, I apologize. I'm not good with dates on these matches unless I know specifically what date they are. So, I'll have a tripod soon too, hopefully, so this will be a little easier. There's a picture of Brian on the cover. This is a very worn out case, so there's Brian on the cover. There's him on the back, wearing the dress. Open it up. I'm not taking the insert out. Those things are hard enough to get back in as it is. It's disc 1. Disc 2, which this thing right here that holds the disc in. Part of it's missing, but as long as it still fits in there, I don't really care. Disc 2. Yeah. Guessing that's Brian on both discs. Okay, so now I'm just going to be talking about off the top of my head document. I watched the documentary the other day, so it should be fresh. Talk about his early life. Brian apparently wasn't expected. All of his siblings were like 3 years apart, and he was like a 6-year span or something. He had somewhere close to 30 or 40 third operations when he was a kid. So that explains the raspy voice and everything in his promos. His sister Linda and Angie were interviewed for this. I think that's her name. I think those were the only two, like, not including his wife and kids, like, family members that were interviewed for this. But yeah, he had a bunch of throat surgeries, and goes into his football career. He was on a scholarship in Miami, Ohio, and I think he holds some kind of record still. I don't know if it's been broken or not. I don't know what record it is, but he holds some kind of football record in Ohio. So he trains, Kim Wood was interviewed for this. That's coach or trainer for the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't know much about football, but I know a little bit from what I watched of this. Brian played for the Cincinnati Bengals, and Kim Wood just talked about, he just didn't quit. We just ran him. We did all this stuff, and Brian Pillman didn't quit. So he was in a nose guard, and for a tackle position, and that's usually a task for a bigger man, and Brian was smaller, and he gave it all he had. At first they treated him really bad. They just didn't let him play or didn't think anything of it, and then the coach gave him a chance one day. He used to get sick. He used to get sick before his games and stuff. Like, I guess they had a game one time, and his new coach, and he was asking where Brian was, and Brian was in the bathroom getting sick because he was so pumped up for the game. Then they get into he played in Canada for a while. Played in Canada, and he got injured. I think it was an ankle injury or knee injury or something. And I think Kim Wood, I think it was him, that suggested that he go and try professional wrestling. So he goes and talks to Stu Hart and Bruce Hart and all of them, and they train him. They trained a lot of, not just the Hart family, but they trained a lot of people. They've trained Dynamite Kid, Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, who was interviewed for this. And they talk about, Mick Foley basically talks about how it was probably an easy transition for Brian because he was used to being in the spotlight or being in the situations where you played through injury. Jim Ross was interviewed for this also. So they show some highlights of his team called Bad Company. I don't remember who was in the team with him, but they have a little promo segment, which I'm going to talk about. I have a little bit of a gripe about this DVD. At the same time, I love it, but I have a few things about it. Then he came up with the Flying Brian name. Chris Benoit puts over his flying maneuvers, like the Flying Brian name, where he would do stuff off the top rope. He was one of the first guys to do that, Brian was. Talk about his tag team with Tom Zink or Z-Man. I think there's a tag team match on here with him and Z-Man. It's probably in the bonus features. See, I haven't actually seen any of these bonus feature matches. Seen a couple of I don't see the gun incident on here either, which we'll get into. But it's on the Stone Cold DVD, too. So. talked about how Brian was really just a studier. He studied all these old tapes and old interviews and old wrestling matches and learned from it. He just became a historian, JR said. They go into his light heavyweight championship tournament and his feud with Jushin Thunder Liger, who actually was inducted into the Hall of Fame a couple years ago. That's one thing I will say right now. Brian Pillman has been dead for 25 years, and he's still not in the Hall of Fame. Triple H, please maybe fix that. If there would have been a good opportunity to put Brian Pillman in the Hall of Fame, it would have been this year, actually. Because not only is it the 25th anniversary of his death, you could have had Melanie give the speech, or Brian Jr., or Stone Cold give the speech before, because Melanie passed away this year, I think. Yeah, I think she did. So, you could have had Austin, and Austin was coming back for a match that weekend. So that would have been the perfect opportunity for them to put Brian in the Hall of Fame right there. But Vince didn't do it. I mean, yeah, you can go in next year or whatever and they'll be fine, but you just missed out on... I hate when they miss out on stuff like that. Because there's just times when things like that work. So we tried to make the light heavyweight title mean a lot more than it originally was. Tried to make it mean as much as the heavyweight title. Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff basically put out the fact that, and Joey Styles, everyone on the DVD basically just said that Brian was ahead of his time in all of his promos and all of his work and stuff like that. His style came earlier than... guys started doing that later, cruiserweights, like Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio and all them. But Brian Pillman really started kind of doing it first. And then they go into his tag team with Steve Austin, the Hollywood Blondes, and Stone Cold talks about it. He said at first he didn't want to team up with Brian because Dusty Rhodes was the booker at the time and was going to give Austin a singles run with the U.S. title and have Harley Race as manager. Well, he gets to the building and Brian Pillman, I guess, comes up to him and goes, "Oh, kid, we got to come up with a finish." And Austin's like, "What? What do you mean? What's going on?" And Brian tells him, "Oh, we're a tag team now." And Steve goes to talk to Dusty and finds out what's going on. And Dusty said, "Yeah, we're going to put you guys in a tag team, baby. We're going to put you in the Hollywood Blonde, or in the tag team title hunt. It's going to be good for business." And then they started riding together and kind of becoming friends. So, yeah. That's how the Hollywood Blondes thing came about. Brian came up with the name. And got them matching gold chains and jackets and vests and whatnot, and trunks to match it. I mean, they had the whole 9 yards. They even took these safety lights out of their bikes to put in their boots and cut the soles out of the shoes and put them in the boots so they would light up or whatever. So that was cool. Talks about his done the interview Melanie, and Melanie talks about how he just wanted to come home and settle down. He didn't want to go anywhere. He just wanted to come home and be with the kids and stuff like that. So, I mean, he cared about his kids. Say what you want about Brian Pillman. Yeah, he had some messed up things going on in his life, but he seemed like he cared about his kids. Brian Jr. really puts that out in perspective on the Dark Side of the Ring episode. I think I liked the Dark Side of the Ring episode more than I did the this DVD. I mean, no, don't get me wrong, I liked it, but, it didn't give as much detail as, they couldn't give as much detail, like all the gory stuff about the custody battle and stuff with Brittany Pillman on Dark Side of the Ring. They couldn't get into that on here. Which, I mean, it's a WWE DVD. They're not gonna get into stuff like that, but yet they get into Jake's stuff on his DVD, which we'll talk about too at a later date. I'll be reviewing that too. And my cat Tessa's sleeping right there. Hey Tessa. Hi. She's sleeping. So they go back to those Hollywood Blondes days, and they just started talking on the mic, and they had this video camera and started doing all these funny things on the mic, doing the Flair for the Gold segment and making fun of Ric Flair's age or whatever, and so, just stuff like that. It's funny. He works with Lex Luger too before his Hollywood Blondes run. There's a match with Luger on here, I think, on the bonus features. They win the tag team titles, and they have a feud with Shane Douglas and Ricky Steamboat. And Ricky does a little quick thing, talks about how Brian hit him with the belt, and Ricky went backstage and cut this promo on him, and then they split them up. They split them up because they weren't meant to get guys over, or they weren't meant to get over as a team. They were meant to put guys over. Basically, they were going to be the jobber team, and Dusty claims, they would have been a tag team still if I would have been in charge, because WCW just had a bunch of freaking turmoil going on backstage. I don't watch much WCW. Yeah, I watch Sting and I watch Benoit and all that. I watch that, but I'm probably not going to be watching any 2000 WCW. I don't know. I just don't watch WCW that much. Which, I don't know. I might like it if I actually sat down and watched it. Maybe I might actually like it. But from what I've heard, it's a bunch of turmoil and whatnot. But so they split up Brian and Steve as a team, and they feud for a while. And then Brian joins the Four Horsemen. And ends up joining them at the Fall Brawl 1995 pay-per-view. Arn Anderson's interviewed for this too. So they didn't interview any of the Hart Foundation for this. Well, Brett, I guess didn't want to be interviewed for this, but Jim Neidhart wasn't interviewed either. Owen's dead, obviously. Davey's gone too, so you couldn't really, I guess, have any of them. I think a lot of them still had bad blood towards WWE, but none of the Hart Foundation was interviewed for this. Steve Austin was interviewed for this, Jim Ross, Paul Heyman, Eric Bischoff, Arn Anderson, Chris Benoit, Mick Foley, Joey Styles, Teddy Long, Bruce Pritchard, all those guys. Melanie Pillman was interviewed for this. Two of his sisters were. Road Warrior Animal was interviewed for this too. So but he joins the Horsemen, and he puts the word out that his contract's coming up pretty soon, and basically creates a scenario where he puts himself in a situation where he sets himself to face Kevin Sullivan at Fall Brawl 1996. Or Super Brawl, whatever that pay-per-view's called. Sorry, I'm a little shaky on my WCW history. But, so, it's a strap match between Pillman and Sullivan. He's already created the loose cannon character by this point. So, he basically gets in the ring, and not 30 seconds into the match, he picks up the mic, and he says, I respect you, Booker Man, or something like that. Yeah, I respect you, Booker Man, and walks out of the ring. So basically, he broke the fourth wall and acknowledged that Kevin Sullivan was like the storyline Booker and whatnot. So then he goes to ECW, but before he does that, he basically tells Eric Bischoff to give him release papers, like real release papers, real termination papers, while they were negotiating. So he went to ECW and basically cut this promo on Eric Bischoff, and that's where he let's just say Pillman had that edginess about him that would have made him perfect for the Attitude Era and ECW. I think Brian Pillman kind of started the Attitude Era, in my opinion. So, goes to ECW. That's when he gets in the car wreck. This car wreck is really his downfall. Okay? He freaking wrecks this car. He wrecks this Humvee, and like his ankle is shattered in a bunch of places, and it's like basically fractured. It's turned around 180 degrees, so that must freaking hurt. His face was all banged up. He flew out of the car and like pierced through the top of the convertible, or I don't know what, or the roof or whatever, and flew out of the car 40 or 50 feet away from it. And Melanie says she didn't even recognize him when she walked into the hospital. That's how bad it was. Meanwhile, he's making negotiations with WWE. Like, so this is bad. This is bad timing for him. But they basically had to fuse his foot into a walking position. Thought he was never going to run, walk, or potentially wrestle again, which he tried to, but I mean, look where it got him. He just didn't accept that he couldn't do it anymore. Comes into WWE a little bit before he should have. Cut this King of the Ring promo on Stone Cold and the whole tournament, basically. And I talk about the interview segment where Austin's interviewing Pillman, or Pillman's interviewing Austin, and Austin's going into this feud with Bret Hart, and Pillman acknowledges Bret, and Austin jumps off. This is where the Pillmanizing term comes from, and I talked about this in a previous video. So Austin takes the chair, puts it on the injured ankle, goes to the top rope, jumps from the top of the freaking ropes to the chair on Pillman's ankle, and just crushes his ankle. That's how they write him off TV. because he came back when he shouldn't have. Like, he wasn't all the way rehabbed from an injury. Talk about the gun incident where Pillman's at home having surgery. Austin threatens to break into his house, shows up, beats up his friends. Meanwhile, Pillman's sitting there doing an interview on the couch, and he pulls out a freaking gun. He pulls out a pistol. Little shocking. I think that's probably the only angle that Vince McMahon ever probably apologized for. I think that's the only time Vince ever apologized. And Brian was calling in, oh, I'm sorry, took that too far. Bischoff claims that he went too far. Yeah, I mean, he was helping the competition. So he comes back, attacks Stone Cold, and has the talked about him getting drug tests. They tested him because they thought he was on something. And you know, they found muscle relaxers, and that's about it in his system. So he's probably over medicating because of the wreck, and he basically just kept working on it. Like, people would